get started.
Waiting for it to show up on my computer.
Yeah, it's about a 20-second delay.
Okay.
Mike, did you mute yourself? I mean, I'm sorry, Mike. Paul, I'm sorry. Did you mute yourself?
Yeah, do you want me not to?
Nope, that's okay. I just got a mute notification. Just as long as you're aware of it, we're good. So. I'm looking at the microphone.
It's on neighbor. It's going to neighbors and friends now,
okay.
And
oh, Ronni, you muted. Okay. All right.
And
we've never had guests use that feature. We've both guests using it tonight. That's good. Maybe it wasn't available before. Every week, it's amazing. We do shows here, and every week they add more features. It's incredible how good this program is.
All right, we're good to go.
All right, terrific. All right, Ronni, thank you very much. Welcome to this week's Weeha.com Roundtable. I am John Lyons, here as always with the managing editor of Weeha.com, Ronni Newton. Today we have two great guests. We've got the Assistant Superintendent of the West Hartford Public Schools, Paul Vicinis, and we've got the Board of Education member and Vice Chair, Dr. Lorna Thomas Farquharson. So we're going to get into two topics tonight. We're going to talk a little bit about schools and what's going to happen this fall and how we're prepared in the age of COVID-19. And we're also going to talk about really tying in the two issues that we've been focusing on for the last 2 months. We're going to talk a little bit about race and how curriculum is changing in the West Hartford school system following an edict from Tom Moore about a month and a half ago to improve the quality of the education and the honesty and accuracy of the education, particularly as it relates to race. So we've got a couple of really neat topics to cover. But we've got a couple of announcements. First, we're very excited. We have a new broadcast partner. And so far, up to this point, we've only been broadcast locally, but we now have a statewide broadcast partner. For the first time, Connecticut News Junkie will be carrying the show live. So welcome to those of you around the state that are watching. We're very excited to have you. And the other thing we're going to do is we're going to start every week with what I'm calling Ronnie's Notebook, because a lot of news tends to break, particularly on these types of subjects that we talk about. So we're going to kick it off with Ronni here to tell us what's in her notebook, and then we're going to start the interview. So Ronni, what's on your mind?
Well, my notebook's right here, actually.
Okay. What's on your virtual notebook?
My virtual notebook, which means I might forget things that I'm supposed to mention. But actually, one of the things that that everybody should know is that the Board of Education is having a special meeting tomorrow night. That's Friday night, or Friday late afternoon, I should say, at 4:30, and we'll be officially appointing a new member, Sean Payson, who was unfortunately briefly on the board, and because of business reasons had to resign at the June meeting, is going to be replaced by a gentleman named Dr. Jason Oliver Chang, who is a professor of history and Asian American studies at UConn, and he's got 3 children who attend Charter Oak International Academy, and a really fantastic background. There's a press release on the Weeha.com site right now. It's going to be in the newsletter tomorrow. It's been shared on several Facebook pages, and if you check it out and you can read about Dr. Chang, I think it sounds like he's going to be a great addition to the Board of Education and bring a perspective that is really unique that others may not be able to represent at this time. So that's one thing that's going on. Some of the other things that are happening in town, actually hot off the presses, the pool is opening tomorrow at Fern. So I'm going to be sharing that information later, and concerts are back in Blueback Square, and I'll be sharing that information later as well. Um, the So the governor had a press conference this afternoon, and the numbers in Connecticut, I think some people continue to be surprised, but actually our COVID cases continue to, the percentage of people testing positive continues to remain under 1%, which is, I think they think is a bit surprising, considering that, people are starting to travel. A lot of businesses have reopened, but today they reported 114 positive cases out of 11,453 cases. I haven't had a chance to look at what West Hartford's numbers are, but when we have new cases, it's, one or two a day at most. Some days there aren't any. So it's actually still remaining positive. Hospitalizations dropped by 1, and unfortunately, there were 9 additional fatalities reported. Josh Gabel, the state chief operating officer, said he's going to be looking into those numbers because they have been a little higher the last 2 days, and he's not quite sure whether or not it's a data reporting issue or whether or not there actually are more fatalities. It doesn't always match the day it's reported. Sometimes there can be a delay. But one of the other things that was, I'm sorry.
No, I didn't mean to cut you off. Just we continue,
okay,
and even nationally, we're being looked at right now as the model of how to manage this. I read an article today where they stack ranked the states in terms of their performance in handling coronavirus, and Connecticut is far and away number 1. I mean, we're very, very lucky. We have a science-based administration, and they seem to be sticking to that missive. So anyway, go on, Ronni. Just my little thoughts on that.
Yeah. So, well, actually, one of the things that they did say, and a new statistic that was being shown today in the report, is the age group that is showing the most positive cases now, and it is 20 to 29, followed by 30 to 39. So there, at this point, it looks like it could be due to, the fact that people in that age group are a little bit less, or a little bit more willing to take risks, and maybe gathering, hanging out with their friends, maybe going to parties. So, that'll be something to explore a little further on the state level. But, in general, in West Hartford, there's really been a very strong effort to get people to wear their masks, particularly in the center. Tonight, there is a group from the fire department. They're on bikes. They're out there talking to people who are not wearing masks and handing them out to people who may not have one with them, but are willing to wear them. And one thing that Mike Cinsagalli, who is the fire marshal and also the director of emergency operations, has said that a lot of times when a member of the fire department or the police department will approach someone who's not wearing a mask, they quickly pull it out of their pocket and put it on. They realize that, oh yeah, maybe I should be wearing this. And I shouldn't smile when I say that it's very, very serious. And I think the majority of people are taking it as seriously as they should be. One of the other major discussions on the governor's press conference today, and they had Dr. Scott Gottlieb on there, who is the former FDA commissioner and a Connecticut resident. They were talking about, and has been very involved in the Reopen Connecticut and the plans to bring kids back to school. They were talking about bringing kids back to school this fall, and this will luckily segue into the 2 guests that we have tonight to speak about. But Scott Gottlieb said that as of now, the way things are now, he trusts that the state is doing the right thing, approaching this the right way, and he is comfortable sending his own children back to school based on what the state and his own school district. And I'm actually not sure where he lives. I think it's in Fairfield County somewhere, but he's comfortable sending his kids back to school. West Hartford has a survey that families are asked to complete by tomorrow, and maybe we can find out a little bit more about what people in town are thinking based on their responses thus far, and what we think things could be looking like in, gosh, how many weeks? 6?
I know it's going to be quick. We do have our first ever poll, Ronnie, running for the roundtable over on Neighbors and Friends. Just for technical issues, we had to put it over there. Patty set it up for us. And there is a poll asking folks who are watching, click over that page, and it's pinned, so you won't have any trouble finding it. And let us know what your thoughts are on various scenarios in terms of your age kids. She's given a lot of options, and so let us know your thoughts, and we'll talk about it a little later in the show. But you want to head over there now and just check it out and give us your thoughts. Select what you think is right, and we'll kick this off. Paul Vicinis. Paul, obviously, I would have to think career-wise, it's probably one of the biggest decisions Tom and you and the other assistant superintendent and the Board of Ed are going to have to make with respect to what happened. So walk us through from a 50,000 foot level. What's the plan now? And then we'll give you some what ifs without getting too crazy here.
Sure. Thanks, John. And thank you, Ronnie, for the opportunity. And hello, Lorna, as well. I'll talk to you soon, I'm sure. In terms of the decision to return, absolutely a huge decision. Is, it probably second only to the decision that we had to close back in March and made that announcement just prior to the whole statewide shutdown. And we've learned quite a bit in that time since we closed. When we started this, we had dramatic concerns watching the news, in China, watching the news in Italy, as to what would the impact look like over here. And while it certainly has been devastating for individual families, and I know families who have been touched by this, and the loss that it created, the one positive thing is Connecticut's role as a leader, and really how we've gone to the protective measures and been able to mitigate so much of the risk. So we've said that this decision to reopen, it's something that we were leaning forward with before the state had put it out there. We made our claim as a district that we see this as a huge issue, as an equity issue, in terms of being able to provide education for all of our children. And watching what happened in the 3 months, as hard as we worked, the students that kind of fell behind and became more disengaged, whether that was due to economic reasons, their parents had to work, they as older adolescents might have had to help, or maybe they were watching children, or maybe just we didn't have the supervision or the support at home because families were working or were ill. That it was driving some gaps in participation that we were very concerned about. We did just amazing outreach. I credit our clinicians, our assistant principals, our social workers, who did go knock on doors and made phone calls. Our director, Eric Dempsey, our director of security, was out there doing wellness checks along with our school resource officers and others. So we're really felt like this was an important decision, and we did feel like Connecticut's been such a leader nationally in terms of our response that we hopefully will have the conditions. We feel like we have them now. We feel like we hope that we will continue to have them in the fall for safe opening. And safety and student health and community health remains number one. That will drive all of our decisions. But the protective measures, the wearing of the masks, the social distancing, and us keeping an appropriate distance whenever possible, the washing of hands more frequently. These are the very, very simple things that if we are paying attention to, we can be able to find a new normal with schools and be able to conduct business, as many of our local community businesses have demonstrated. And I think to Ronnie's point, as she was talking about, where do numbers spike and things like this, as a school, we feel that we can do our part because we feel that we can get our teachers, we feel that we can get the practices in place in our classrooms, in the physical environment. We feel that we can work with our students. we need it to be a community. We need to be comprehensive. It can't end at 2:30 when kids get off the bus. It has to be, we have to maintain some diligence with it at home in order for this to be successful. But we're excited to go back. The teachers are excited to see students. There is anxiety and apprehension, but in terms of getting to the business of education, it's a big decision, but I think it's the right decision, and I'm glad that we're on the path.
Talk about some of the options that parents with school age K through 12. What are some of the options? I know a survey went out. Discuss, share with us a little bit what was on the survey. What are some of their options? My youngest just graduated Hall, so unfortunately I'm not in that group anymore. But what are some of the options parents face?
Absolutely. So we put out a survey, and the state in the plan that we will submit to the state toward the end of next week. We'll be having a board meeting on Tuesday to showcase the plan to the public. First and foremost, we have a plan where we're asked by the state to bring all students back to school on a regular basis, but provide an online option within that plan for any families where students themselves may be in a high-risk population due to a health concern or something, or loved ones in the home may be in that high risk, or maybe the family just feels based on their own readiness and their own preparedness to have things return to normal. Maybe they're not ready. So that's a family choice, and that's essentially what the survey asked. It was other than some simple demographic questions to connect you to a school and a grade level. The questions were, I feel that I'm ready to go back to school in the fall, and that's my choice for my child. I feel that I would like to stay at home, or I'm undecided. And the early results from that, and pretty much the results as they continue to come in today, showed that there is a significant majority of the West Hartford community that wants to come back. We're somewhere between, say slightly more than 5% of families who do have a situation, and we totally respect that. There's not any judgment in terms of folks making the right decision for their circumstances. Slightly more than 5% who are saying that at this point in time, with the information that they have, that they were thinking that they would do at-home learning online. And then there's another 5 to 10% who are undecided, and that will be the work in the coming week as this survey closes. And I would encourage anyone listening, if they haven't had the opportunity to respond, to go ahead onto our website at whps.org, and you'll see a link to that survey right away when you go on, and respond to that. Hopefully by tomorrow, our schools will be engaged in next week, when that survey time is up, to go ahead and to begin to do the outreach to any folks who did not have the opportunity to respond. And they'll also, certainly after, and probably after the board presentation, and we have this public release of what the specifics of our plan are, do follow up with those folks who indicated that they were undecided, so that we can have a solid plan for each and every individual student in the district.
So one follow-up, and Ronni, I'm not trying to dominate. I'll hand it over to you after this follow-up.
No, I'm taking notes.
Okay, good, terrific. So Ronnie's double tasking here. She's working on a story about this as well.
Just gathering background information.
Yeah. So Kim Beth, who's an active mom around town, she makes a comment here in the chat. Very important to give credit as well to the teachers who went above and beyond to engage students. So my question about the teachers, talk to me about their role in this process currently. What type of feedback are you getting? Is there a lot of communications? How's the union responding? What are you seeing with that?
Absolutely. So teachers are obviously just critical to every success that we have in the district. It's nice to sit in my office and hear the compliments from the board or the community, but it's nothing that I can take credit for. It's the hard work of our teachers, and the degree to which they stepped up in this was amazing. We turned the whole district in 3 days' time back in March online, and they did a phenomenal job. And just the flexibility and everything else. What we did to engage them in the plan was following that before and throughout the end of the year. Myself, Ann McKernan, my director of secondary ed, Carrie Jones, my director of elementary ed, the principals and the assistant principals and department supervisors, we hosted meetings. We went to virtual faculty meetings, and we kind of got all the lessons learned and all the best practices from the teachers. We hosted listening sessions. I can tell you we had plenty of sort of folks who reached out to us individually and gave us input to these plans. And we put out for the teachers before they left for the summer, questionnaires, question banks, things that they would want us to know that would help to inform what we would assume to be an online 2.0 plan, the second version, should we go to that. When we had the decision to come back to school in earnest, we of course started working, and there's a whole set of state guidance that pretty much maps out much of what we're doing, but we've had ongoing conversations with all of the neighboring districts to kind of compare our plans and to steal good ideas and share good ideas. And as we've developed those plans, there's major lines of effort. Mine is under curriculum and instruction. Dr. Andy Morrow, my colleague, has one that's related to health and safety. Dr. Rosina Haskins has one related to community outreach. Dr. Nelson has one related to social emotional wellness, and then Rick Ledwith, our director of human resources, runs a committee related to how we'll kind of coordinate with staff and the needs of staff and all of those pieces with absence policies and things of that nature. And on each of those committees, we've engaged a number of teachers. On my committee particularly, you had talked about the union. I worked with the union president, and she pretty much gave me a list of teacher representatives at each level who could support not only my need to get input from an elementary, middle school, and high school perspective, but then also have the ear of the teachers group as a whole. And similarly, all of the other committees have a number of different teachers that are involved, as well as potentially board members, community members, and things of this nature. Myself, I have a weekly meeting with our union president, the teachers union, where we go through kind of the list of what the plans are, what's happening in terms of our progression. She'll feed me some questions. I'll feed her information and get her direct sense. And that's the biggest way that we've been engaging our teachers. I had 4 hours of meetings today, one with each level, elementary, middle, and high school, where we had teacher representatives on the line giving up their time in the summer to provide us specific feedback on the proposals as they exist today, and taking that feedback to kind of reshape it in preparation for a presentation to the board next week.
Which is a great segue, actually, to bring Lorna into the discussion. I know the Board of Education is having, doesn't usually meet in the summer, but is having a meeting on Tuesday night. What do you anticipate the board is going to discuss at that meeting, and what's the role of the Board of Education in helping craft this plan for the administration?
Certainly. First of all, thank you so much. An honor to be here. In regard to you saying that typically the board does not meet over the summer, that certainly is so, with the exception of this summer. Certainly with the unique circumstances we are under. And so the frequency of us meeting and discussing has certainly been more than usual, but all for very important reasons. In terms of the role of the Board of Education, as we know, overall, it's in regard to policy making and certainly the budget making, but all of that is governed by wanting to support and prioritize the wellness of the students and the young people who are in our town, which also means having a collaboration with the family and the community at large. And so for that reason, in response to unrolling the plans moving forward, as Paul made mention to, there are several different committees that have been meeting. and each board member has served on one of those committees, really to not only contribute in terms of talking, but more so to hear what others are saying and speaking about. And so it has been an approach where it's not a one-shot decision. The types of possibilities that were presented and shared with us in April have certainly changed from where we are now. It is very good and promising to hear from what you made reference to the most recent press conference, that the numbers are going down. However, we still have to take into account what that may mean for next month, and certainly the impact of the pandemic and the effect it has caused on so many communities, and in particular our community and our children, because of that. And I'm sure we're going to discuss more of that as the interview, or rather as the discussion continues. But we know that COVID-19 has unveiled many, many, many challenges, many, many inequities that have been longstanding, but their presence has become even more glaring. And so whatever plans we take moving forward, we have to take those pieces into account.
So does the board need to approve the district's plan, or is it more of like a giving consensus, kind of a collaboration, providing some ideas, and then it's really up to the administration to make the decision?
It's a collective effort in terms of supporting whatever initiatives are presented. We certainly give credence and recognize the role of our superintendent and how he certainly connects with the staff that assert, support, and work with him, and the work that's done behind the scene that is presented to us at the Board of Ed meeting. And so with that, we'll have discussions, and with those discussions, it will either raise questions or have discussion in terms of what else may be explored, or it may say, yes, we support the plans moving forward. But ultimately, whatever decisions are made, the execution of that is led by our superintendent, Tom Moore, and his executive team, and certainly the teachers. They play a vital role in carrying out the execution of that as well.
And we do these every week, and already we've had more questions on this one, I think, than we've had on any other one. In fact, maybe most of the others combined. So Lorna, I'm trying to think where to pivot here, because let me scroll up and I'll just do these in order. All right, so for both of you, there's concern. Laura Rebecca comments that I guess the survey's been available for several weeks, and there's concern, kind of a two-part question here, that number one, a lot of people completed their surveys early before there was much awareness of what was happening what just wasn't happening in Florida, Texas, Alabama, Georgia, California. So there's some trepidation there. And then the other thing is, recent surveys have shown that approximately nationally 65% of parents have grave concern sending their kids back to school fall. So I guess can you talk, either one of you or both of you talk to that to those comments?
Sure, I'm happy to start. I mean, the first thing I would say, first and foremost, in the survey itself, it does talk about if you change your mind to reach out to us. But one of the things I would say is, if any parent that's out there that's listening has had a change of heart in any way, shape, or form, and I believe the survey has only been out for, I think this is the second week. I could be wrong on that. It could be a total of 3, but it's certainly not a long time. If they go ahead, we do have some duplicates in there. So I don't know if that's evidence of folks who have changed their mind, or folks that have simply, sometimes you hit it and you're not sure if it went through and you submit it twice. But we're scrubbing those responses, and where people have given an affirmative response in either direction, I want to attend, I want to stay home, we're going to go with the most recent thing that was listed there. And then, obviously, as I said, we're going to be reaching out to anyone who was uncertain at the time. And that's going to form the basis so that we can know, okay, how do we staff the online part and how do we staff the in-school part? And once we have schedules, we'll be sending out that communication so that, folks will get that confirmation of, hey, this is the last thing that I kind of indicated as my intent. Relative to national surveys, I'll simply say it was not a surprise to us that Connecticut's survey and West Hartford specifically, our survey results, our initial results that are showing, between 85 to potentially upwards to 90% of our families do feel comfortable returning. and understandably, somewhere between 10 to 15% of our families do have situations that makes them uncomfortable, and that's totally understandable. It's not surprising that that doesn't match national statistics, because as you said, John, Connecticut's stats don't match national statistics. We're leading. I saw a comment in the chat about, and it's on another question about the importance of masks. And the thing I say, masks are one very important piece among a coordinated system of protective measures. And when you're doing all of those things, and when you're doing them comprehensively, not just at school, not just when someone's looking, as I heard, I think Ronni say, that's when it makes a difference. That's when you can really reap those benefits of those protections. And so we feel like that we can put that into place at the schools, and we feel like Connecticut and West Hartford as a community, can have the vigilance to maintain those outside of school hours. That's going to keep us safe as a community.
And the questions continue to pile in, and I'm trying to scan them and listen to you as well. So I apologize if I ask you to repeat something or if I miss something. But where was the question? I'm sorry, I had the question and I just scrolled out of it. I'm going to ask you to bear with me for a second.
Well, why don't we ask this question about whether or not the teachers, as well as any other stakeholders, have been surveyed in addition to the parents or guardians of the children in school?
Sure, that's a stage that's upcoming in terms of getting feedback from teachers. I do know that not necessarily a survey that's gone out that says, are you coming back or not coming back, but there have been separate communications from our HR department and from our union leadership out to teachers, sort of indicating if you know today that you have, let's say, just for example, a compromised health condition that makes it unsafe for you to come, and you're planning not to return, to reach out to our human resources department and talk about it, so that they can be made aware. And I'm very aware from talking to the teacher reps that are on my committee and from the union president herself, that she's aware that there are some teachers that are kind of waiting to see the unveiling of this plan. And so once that's become public and the board has the opportunity to weigh in on it and help influence it on Tuesday, and then once that final product is filed with the state at the end of this next week, that'll be the opportunity, I'm sure, where our HR department will be providing teachers with, whether it's a survey or whatever the guidance is for their communication channels, because some of that's going to go directly to HR relative to like HIPAA and other things. It's not something that we would necessarily be telling them they have to go through a principal or anyone else if they're disclosing personal health information.
Yeah. The question, a couple of questions come in. One regarding mask usage and requirements for the school year, and then another one is there any discussion? This is for Lorna. Has the Board of Ed discussed a hybrid method for, in this case, high schools? This is from Jennifer Evans. As some subjects have to be online learning, are harder to lead online versus others. For example, honors Chinese might be tougher to do online as opposed to gym.
We have not formally discussed that, because one of the pieces with the Board of Education is whenever we have meetings, they have to be announced and they have to be formalized. So the last time we met was in June or July. And so the meeting we have on Tuesday will be very telling in terms of what's presented to us of the options. I know earlier on, back in April and May, when different ideas were thrown around in different discussions, that was a piece that was brought up, a hybrid method. Whether that is what is going to be presented again on Tuesday, we shall see. But I would not rule that out. I think we have to be open-minded in terms of what's the best way to have our students return to school in a safe way. And that will require looking at different options. And I look forward to hearing what our executive team and superintendent are prepared to share with us.
And we will present a hybrid as part of the statewide plan to the board on Tuesday. That is part of the statewide requirement that we include a hybrid plan for the potential, and I see it in another question, for the potential of a localized spike to where part of the state might get closed down or into a partial closure versus the entire state. That is a Department of Public Health call when those kinds of things happen, to answer the question. But that, it's important relative to the hybrid. The charge of the state of Connecticut from the governor's office is for all schools to reopen and have the ability for all students to attend every day. So the primary plan that we're going to bring to the board is, here's how we reopen, with the option for families who want to remain at home to be able to remain at home. That is what all school districts are charged with. And I'm aware, of some early plans that have gone into the state that kind of somehow missed that fine print, and the state gave them, feedback to make amendments to their plan.
Is there a scenario here in town where, and I don't want you to speculate, so if I'm stepping too far into speculation, stop me, where a school could be closed while others remain open, or would it be a uniform decision if, heaven forbid, there's a spike?
Honestly, I would be speculating to answer, but let's just say if I were pushed on an answer today, I could picture a theoretical possibility. But once the important follow-up questions come, okay, what would those conditions be and what would it look like? I could not venture. All of that guidance, honestly, would be helped and informed by the Department of Public Health, as opposed to Paul Vicinis or Lorna or Tom or anyone sort of saying, this is what we think we're going to do.
It's my understanding, though, that the plan is, particularly in the elementary schools where the students are going to be cohorted, if there is a positive case, that classroom might be basically shut down for a couple of days. Those kids kept at home, sanitizing done. Is that an accurate understanding?
That I can't speak to how many days and what will that look like. And it becomes so situational because, let's be honest, there's going to be a positive case somewhere in West Hartford tomorrow. And we had a positive case, we're aware of folks, who have tested positive on staff, but school's not in session. So a lot of those positive cases we recognize are going to happen outside of the school district through casual contact and other social settings. And then the question is, okay, in the school setting, if that's an adult or if that's a student, we'll do the contact tracing. I'm sure that there'll be some kind of short term, we have to figure out what this means, but we have to look into the individual circumstances. I'm aware in other cases, outside of education, where a person has been in contact with someone and they've gone to the hospital and they've said, I feel like I need to be tested and I feel like this, and they start to talk to them and say, okay, well, what happened? Well, I have a friend and they, I saw them yesterday. I was in the room with them and they had COVID. And, the follow-up questions, okay, well, were you more than 6 feet away for more than 10 minutes? Were you wearing a mask? And, persons can be sent home, persons can be admitted for testing just based on what those individual circumstances are. So certainly our protocols and those will be in our plan. And honestly, it's not part of my part. My part's the curriculum and instruction, so I don't want to go too far on a limb and misspeak. But that will be well articulated, and on that committee, that health and safety committee, not only do we have our administrators and community members, but we have health professionals that are helping to inform that, and then we have the direct guidance that we get in concert with the Department of Public Health.
So on that note, I definitely do not want to give the second topic short shrift, and we've blown through 40 minutes here really quickly. So Paul, I'm gonna pivot. Your role as head of curriculum, which you just mentioned, and hello to was that your wife who just walked by?
Yes, it was.
Hello to your wife. Can you talk to us a little bit about Tom? Tom, laid down the gauntlet here. Tom Moore, superintendent of the schools here in West Hartford, probably 6 weeks ago. Early June, when he said, we're going to be proactive in our curriculum as it relates to race, racial history. Talk a little bit about what's he done, what is being done, what's happening on that topic?
Absolutely, and thanks for making this. This is such an important topic, and I'll try to just segue it with the COVID. This whole global pandemic is happening during a period of time where there was just some dramatic social unrest and upheaval in and along this, race relations in this whole piece, and it forms a part of our plan. We had a plan before the pandemic. Tom came out and he talked. With the pandemic, Tom came out and talked about we need to be taking a lead on this. We need to simply do better. We layer onto this a whole piece of social isolation that comes in with the pandemic and the need for social emotional learning in the plan. So we're taking that social emotional learning piece and that need for a strong anti-racism curriculum, and we're looking at how we merge those in our return to school so that we can set the conditions so that students know that they're safe, so that students know that we care about them, and so that we do, honestly, a better job and the best possible job, to have all students become healthy, happy, well-educated citizens. I would say that as a district, West Hartford has been a significant leader in this work, this larger work that we frame under cultural competence. We have more than 5 years ago had an assured professional learning experience for all staff in and around the topic of unconscious bias and racial understanding and identity. We have created systems to include a position of the Director of Diversity Advancement, Dr. Rosina Haskins, who has just been an incredible leader in this work for a number of years. And we've had so many things, but the truth of the matter is when we sit back and we look at kind of the state of our country and how folks are treating each other, whether that's locally or whether that's nationally, we know that we simply have to do more and we have to do better. And so what we're trying to do is add an anti-racism layer to our cultural competence work. And we're trying to be very proactive. I can talk about a number of efforts that are underway and that we continue to work on. And we have in terms of your big question, how do we kind of communicate that out? We have a publication called Connections. That's a quarterly newsletter, and our entire upcoming edition is devoted to this topic, talking about our statement and our position, a summary of things that we have done, areas of need that we still see, and our commitments and some of our lines of effort to things that we plan to do moving forward. I just want to pause and see if there's a follow-up or if Lorna has a jump in.
I definitely want to get Lorna's thoughts on this as well. Lorna, talk about it from your personal perspective, if I could be so bold to ask, and also from the Board of Ed perspective.
Sure. If I may start with the Board of Ed perspective.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah.
And that certainly is wanting to support the initiatives that are being talked about in terms of having a more anti-racist approach to things. But I do want to say the conversation has been had, and Paul alluded to this. It was prior to COVID-19. I vividly recall at the opening convocation that we had last year, and Superintendent Tom Moore, in his comments, speaking about the realities of racism. And he reflected on his son's travel abroad and his time in South Africa and the learning he had with apartheid, and just relating that to the different inequities that are still present in this country. So the seed was planted then. Unfortunately, what has transpired as of late has made that seed sprout to become a weed. And as Paul made reference to the talk, the conversation, the advocacy work in terms of multiculturalism and being more culturally aware and competent has been longstanding. However, we know that that's not enough. It's one thing to be culturally aware, but if we are aware of blatantly racist acts that are happening and we are silent, then we are complicit and we are colluding with the problem. And I think that's the piece. Now I'm transitioning into the personal aspect of it, personally, because clearly I'm a woman of color, and this is not something I can choose to be involved with. I am involved with it, whether I like it or not. And I think that's something that's going to be so important with our allies, recognizing that this is not a short-term commitment. This is not something that you can decide to be a part of now and maybe not tomorrow. And the purpose for the word anti-racist speaks volumes, because if someone says, well, I'm not a racist, or I don't believe in and support those views, that's more of a passive approach. But when you say you're anti-racist, that's when you see wrongdoings, you actively speak out and work towards changing that for the better. And that certainly relates to our school systems, because that's where the foundation is led. But let's keep it real, let's be honest. The learning does not just happen within the walls of a school building. The learning happens before a child first goes to school, and it certainly happens after hours and once they graduate from school. And that's why this is a charge that really needs to be community led. We need our community to be involved in this pandemic. And as we do know, very glad that West Hartford has recognized through a recent proclamation on Juneteenth that racism is a pandemic. And that is something that we are dealing with. In addition to pandemic of COVID-19, racism is a longstanding one, and it's impacting all of us. So we have to do more. And I am glad to be a part of a school system that is speaking up and recognizing that we need to do more and making those actions in doing so.
I love Dr. Farquharson's passion when she speaks about this. It's inspiring, and it the issues that we have in American public education around this are just systemic. And a lot of this work oftentimes falls under, say, social studies. It's the natural curricular connection for some of the work, and the difficulty being that in a high school setting specifically, or even when we look pre-K through 12, a lot of the education is focused around U.S. history, and the African American experience within U.S. history is not, is often the story of struggle and the civil rights movement, and it paints it's this concept of privilege that if you don't really step back and think about it, you don't realize that as a student of color, as you're going through your educational experience, the portrayal and the historical figures that you learn about are reflecting those efforts and those achievements related to struggle, whereas your peers sitting next to you, those historical figures that they're learning about are placing them and have these subliminal identity messages about achievements and other things that don't come with the same chains of oppression that others have had. And so we're trying to rewrite that script within our curricular programming to say, how can we ensure that not only do we have all voices and lesser represented voices being heard in our curriculum and in the exposure of content, but how can we ensure that through a process of what we call mirrors and windows, that we are providing the stories of achievement, so that no matter who I am, no matter what my cultural background is, I've got some form of a personal connection that I'm reading about, that I'm hearing about, that makes me see myself in the curriculum and see myself in positive lights, to understand the contributions of my cultural heritage, which if we simply go back in time, and if we had the breadth of being able to teach anything and everything we want, we can point to any historical period and all of the various contributions of so many people of a wide variety of backgrounds. But when you study U.S. history and even look at the curricular documents that are given to us by the state, here's what you have to kind of do. It's a very narrow focus, and so we're trying to widen that lens. And then, to Lorna's point, we're trying to add to that the very proactive measures of anti-racism and calling it out where we see it and looking for it in our systems and our structures and really our everyday conversations, and make sure that we're educating people.
And how quickly can something like that happen? I mean, this is, it's not like racism is new, but there's definitely a very renewed, clear, I shouldn't say clear, but a renewed, strong focus on it. And a strong feeling that something needs to be done and it needs to be done now. But how quickly can those changes to the curriculum be made? And things like, hiring of more teachers of color to reflect the diversity in
Sure.
the population. How quickly can that happen?
So, everything in education, I would say, moves more slowly than we would ever want it. But the good news is, this is work in terms of adjusting that lens. This is work that we've been engaged in for well over 5 years. We've done the work of identifying points of tangency within some of our curriculum. Certainly, we looked and we have a rewrite happening this summer at our middle school levels, which is a regional history approach in those grade levels. We have ongoing work at the 8th grade and 10th grade level, looking at our U.S. history to identify further points of tangency and identify those stories. We've done significant resource adoption at the elementary level over the last 3 years to identify texts that celebrate and provide positive examples, whether they're historical figures or whether they're even just children's literature, nonfiction. You're reading about families, and the main characters are represent diversity. And you have to look deeper than just, do the characters represent diversity? You have to look, what are the roles of those characters? Are they the protagonists? Are they in professions? If I have a book on nursing, do I see or nursing or healthcare and doctors? Do I see persons of color that are doctors, that are teachers? Or if I look at some older print materials, they might show some diversity, but they didn't position people. And those are very subliminal messages that I don't think, if we're not paying attention, we're not seeing. You asked about the teacher hiring. This has been something that's written into our board goals for a number of years. And it is, you think about the tenure of a teacher, it's 30 years for a retirement. So the teachers change much more slowly than the students do. And we've become increasingly diverse. But we have demonstrated incremental growth among the diversity of our teaching staff every year for 6 continuous years. It's slow. It amounts to only a 2.5% increase. But if you look at a different lens, we've had like a net change of 24 teachers. 19 of those are teachers of color. 19 among 24 teachers who are in minority race classifications. That's during a period of time that there was a net decrease of 1 teacher. So over the 6-year period, we've brought in a net of 24 minority teachers, 19 of color, and we've lost in that same period of time, say, 25 teachers who would classify as white. So those are measurable gains. Those are real people that we can point to and real increases. But we're a staff of nearly 1,000. So it takes a significant amount of time to turn this large ship.
So,
if I may,
yep.
I just want to share a recent communication had with Dr. Rosina Haskins, who, as we know, is the Director of Diversity Advancement. And in the course of communication, I just want to quote her words, because I think it speaks volumes again when we talk about curriculum and how soon we may or may not be able to implement it. It's not just about the teaching of the curriculum, it's about how it is taught. And this is what she said. The biggest point that I like to emphasize is that how we teach is as important as what we teach. While curriculum can be rewritten to correct harmful inaccuracies, misleading history, and intentional omissions about the African American and Black experience, it is important and respectful for educators to attain the knowledge, skills, and competencies for equity and anti-racist pedagogy. So I think that is really important because, again, it's not just about us teaching at the students. It's a joint process. We're teaching with the students, and that may mean some educators learning some pieces on their own accord. And that's important because the way that you teach can emphasize and influence, rather, how well someone will receive it. If you say, this is great, that's entirely different from this is great. And so those pieces are important to recognize with any curriculum development. It's important to recognize how the teacher is teaching.
And Paul, how do you stay on top of that? I mean, I think that's a really important point she brings up. How do you know how these folks are handling the kids in the classroom to that level?
Well, we've had, it's really through ongoing professional development, ongoing staff conversations. I would, I see some comments in the chat about some of the amazing things that are happening with our staff. Book clubs, we've had workshops, we've had folks, we have an incredible team of dedicated teachers as part of our Equity and Diversity Council that have helped to lead this work. And then it's colleagues partnering with colleagues, helping them, how do you have this tough conversation? How do I, as a white male, have credibility and go in and try to have a conversation with adolescents and backgrounds, that are different? I know I can do it with math or with social studies. How do I have the real personal conversation? So we've got some great teacher leadership. We've invested in them. We've done a significant amount of professional development that's a lot deeper for folks that are helping lead that, sending them out to things. And then we had just an amazing set of assured professional learning for everyone on this topic, all teachers, para-educators, teaching assistants, this past election day that Dr. Haskins coordinated across the district level. The work continues to grow. We now have a parent community, the EDI, where our parents have wanted to be more engaged, and so we've helped work with them to define structures to really let that work kind of seep out into the larger and broader community. And now we're taking stock of all the various, we have several different community organizations, and I know that Dr. Haskins has been working closely. They have missions that are very well aligned to each other. So how do we get them communicating and create some synergy so that we can all work collectively?
That's terrific, Paul. Thank you. I want to just give a quick apology. There's a very minor background technical issue that Ronni and I have been trying to resolve for about 35 minutes. It's not affecting the broadcast, and it's not affecting what people are seeing online, but it's a minor technical issue. I think we can resolve it after we go off air. I apologize if at any moment I've seemed distracted, but we've been trying to troubleshoot this thing since about 25 minutes past the hour. So my apologies. So we are up against it. Lorna, let me go to you. Any last comments or any last thoughts before we sign off here?
I'm glad we're having this conversation, and I know that you've had other roundtable discussions touching on race as well. And I encourage for these conversations to continue. Certainly, the tragic murder of George Floyd has sparked a lot of charge and a lot of people to talk and to discuss. But we need to recognize that the need to be involved should not just happen at that level of tragedy. The need to become involved needs to happen at any level of racism. And that's, again, why we refer to systemic racism, the different systems of it, where racism is so embedded in the way things are done that it just is a part of the process. And we need to change that process. So I encourage those who are listening, if you see a situation where, let's say, you see someone is being approached in a rude or a racist type way, to not hold back in acknowledging that. Now, not at all saying everyone go out there and put yourself at risk or be confrontational with someone. No, not at all. But I think that when we see things that happen, when we see people who are being mistreated, that it's important for us as citizens, as human beings, regardless of what color you are, to speak up and speak out about that. Because the way that things have been escalating as of late, it's beyond unfortunate. I've shared before a very close family friend of our family, the Abernathy family. And we know the Abernathys are the close friends of Dr. King. And Juanita Abernathy was my other mom. I went to Spelman College in Atlanta, Georgia. And her family was my other home for weekends and then celebrating, getting away for different holidays. And the contributions that they made during the civil rights movement, to see their marches, to read about their marches, to see their pictures, and to see that we're doing that again, yes, we can say how far we've come, but we certainly are reminded of how far we still have to go. And that level of involvement and commitment happens from every level of our society, every neighborhood, every neighbor. So thank you again for having this conversation, and let's just say, let's keep it coming.
Dr.
Just,
Oh, sorry, Ronnie, go ahead.
I just wanted to say one quick thing before we go to Paul. I'd love to welcome anyone who would like to submit an op-ed to weeha.com. We'd really like to encourage the continuation of this really important discussion about racism, and really anyone who has the motive or motivation to write an op-ed, I'd love to consider it for publication, because we have a platform. It's meant to engage our citizens, and I would love to help people get their message out and encourage that conversation. Send it to me at editorial@we-ha.com.
All right, and Paul, any last words before I say our goodbyes?
I'd be hard pressed to follow Lorna, honestly, but I want to just reinforce what she said. I couldn't agree more. I take that as our personal charge as part of our mission to inspire and prepare kids. What are we preparing them for? We're preparing them for a global society. We're preparing them to be good citizens, and that means to have that safe and healthy respect and look upon each other as human beings. I want to credit the teachers that do this work day in and day out, and the dedication and the bravery, especially when you may not know all the right answers, but you just know it's the right thing to do to help educate yourself and take risks and put yourselves out there. So I feel very blessed to work in this district. There's no place I'd want to be otherwise, because I feel like we focus on the right things. We set very high standards for ourselves, and I'm just glad to be a part of it. So thanks.
Thank you, Paul. We're grateful for what you do, and we're grateful that you gave us an hour of your time tonight to talk about it. We're going to want you back on as the school year gets closer, because I think there could be developments. We definitely want to stay on top of them. I'll be looking forward to the meeting next week to see what the details are. And Dr. Farquharson, thank you so much. We really hope you'll come back on too. I speak for the town. We're grateful to have you, and thank you for all that you do for the Board of Ed and for the community. Ronni, I'm going to sign off for Ronni Newton and John Lyons. I'm John Lyons. We will see you next week. Next week, we're going to be talking voting. We have the Essie LeBreau, and we've got the two registrars of voters for the town of West Hartford. So we're going to be talking about mail-in voting and all things voting. So you definitely want to tune in next Thursday night, 6 p.m. WHCI TV, weeha.com, Neighbors and Friends, and now statewide on Connecticut News Junkie. Thank you all very much, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.